Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to another waiting for melatonin to kick in video. I have taken a couple of natural sleep aids and far apart from the usual experience in War Thunder, at least the reputation that it's gotten at the higher tiers, we are actually playing a very non-cancerous lineup, well, at least in my humble opinion. But this will all be background noise for the conversation I'd like to have with you all today. I am, as a standout feature of my personality these days, a big fan of the game of War Thunder. I've seen the ups and downs that the game has gone through, and mere days before update 1.97 drops, I am actually very surprised and delighted to see the features that are likely to be coming to the game shortly. I'm a happy man. I must admit I was growing concerned, and it's very nice to see a few of my key concerns being addressed immediately. And that's not the point of this video either, but specifically it's very encouraging to see ATGM helis getting a higher spawn point cost, making them more valuable in terms of a high value target to take down, and more of a risk if played unreasonably, and most importantly, locking them out of being a first spawn option for ground battles, just like ground support aircraft, or I should say other ground support aircraft. Close air support helicopters with their meta-defining ATGMs will not be available until you've gained some points and died the glorious death that every tanker in War Thunder eventually gets to experience, even Vladimir himself. In any event, we are sharing that experience with whatever foe raises its head against glorious Mother Russia in Mother Russia's favorite foreign son, the Valentine. This was shortly after the Valentine's Day sale, where the Soviet Valentine Premium became available, and I was delighted to play this match. But again, that's not the talking point, excuse me, the pills are kicking in already, of this video either. To catch you up to speed, in case you didn't know, this is going to be a slow conversation type video, so sit back, relax, enjoy the ASMR, as I'm probably sitting too close to the mic again, as I'm wont to do. But in any event, this is going to be a chill, relaxed video where I just kind of ramble over some topics as my mind wanders. And the main idea I'd like to get across is what I like about War Thunder, what I like about what is probably my second favorite game that I can think of right now, especially in terms of how it's set up. It really just tickles my fancy in a lot of ways, checks a lot of boxes that actually War Thunder is, in its own way, opposed to. And what do I mean opposed? Whenever you're making something, whenever you're making a statement, you end up proving some things and disproving others. Does that make sense? This is basic logic. It means what it means, and it does not mean what it does not mean. So when I say that the object is round, you shouldn't expect to find square corners on the thing. and yet you can find a use for a square peg, and you can find a use for a round hole. It's just that the twain were not meant to directly impinge. Okay, fancy pants Toshio, shut up and tell me what you actually wanted to tell me. Okay, guess who's just entered my subconscious. Wait, subconscious? Never mind, I wouldn't notice you there. That other part that's just behind my eyeballs in my brain. Cerebellum? Anyway. You're now at the front of my mind, my friend, and my point is this. You can design one game that is a lot of fun and a lovely game, the best it could possibly be, in fact, your favorite game. And you could design a second game that is all of those things and completely different from the aforementioned. That is the play between these two games that I enjoy so much right now. I played the heck out of Earth Defense Force 4 point whatever for PC. It's the Steam PC port of a game, Earth Defense Force 4, that was made for the PlayStation, I want to say 4. I'm pretty sure it's PS4. I haven't touched a PS3 game in a long time, but fear not. Earth Defense Force has been going on the PlayStation since, I'm pretty sure, PlayStation 1 or even N64. I'm not quite sure on that one, but it's a long-standing series and an interesting one in that it does something in its design that War Thunder also does in its own way, being an iterative game instead of a continually developed one. And yes, War Thunder is being developed, don't be fooled. Another thing I'm happy to see in War Thunder lately is a lot of quality of life upgrades, UI improvements, and this is just a big one for me. The game is looking more beautiful with some updates to effects. We've seen fire and smoke effect upgrades. We've seen gunfire upgrades in terms of sound and visual effect. And we are going to see further fire and explosion upgrades. And I'm very excited for the explosion upgrades. If you zoom in on an explosion in the replay system right now, I mean now being before 1.97 drops, which will probably be after this. Anyway, this video is going to be old news by the time it even comes out. I'm very excited to see higher resolution explosions. Is that a simple enough statement? I did mention that I just took a couple of sleeping pills, right? And those are stacked on top of the Bang energy drink that I drank a few hours ago. That is the reason that I feel the need to take a couple of all-natural, non-habit-forming sleeping pills before I go to bed. I feel like it's important to mention that these pills are melatonin and not anything else. Sleeping pills apparently can really mess with you, and my brother was on some sleeping pills. As I allow my mind to ramble, fear not, we shall return to the point at hand. But I've swapped hands real quick. You see, you can do that with a knife. You like, if you're getting ready to stab somebody and they're getting ready to defend yourself, if you toss your knife over to your other hand and punch them in the face, it's so easy to stab them in the gut at that point. Anyway, pro tip. Don't go around murdering people, but if you have to, you know, think about it. Nobody expects you to toss that knife over to the other hand. Anyway. I got all the black belts in my class. I could get them every time, except one. One guy that was just way better fighter than me. Anyway. It's really fun to pretend to stab each other with plastic or like rubber knives. Man, that's the best. Now I'm way off the topic. What was I saying? Right. Effects upgrades to War Thunder, big thumbs up, and Earth Defense Force 5 is the game that I'm currently playing alongside War Thunder right now. And I'm having an absolute blast because I very much appreciate this feature of the Earth Defense Force games that they know a winning thing when they see it, and they keep what's good, and they continue to change and update and throw in variety on the vast number of features of the games. So what are the things that I love about War Thunder? Well, I've talked about those quite a bit. So let's start off, or continue on, I should say, as we get taken down here and go into close air support mode that I love so very, very much. But let's continue on by talking about what I enjoy and what I've noticed about what I enjoy about Earth Defense Force 5, specifically a PC game. It's designed to be played with a gamepad, and it can be played with keyboard and mouse, but it's actually generally better to use a gamepad just because of how the UI and controls and everything work together. That'll make more sense if you've played the game. But it just is what it is. One of the nice things about having a game that uses a gamepad is, one, I have a good quality gamepad. I highly recommend what's it called? Bleh. I've derailed myself on a side topic. As Logitech. Yes, I'm a big fan of Logitech. They have some fantastic twin stick controllers out there. Let's move on. But one of the nice things about having a game that uses a gamepad is I don't have to worry about keyboard and mouse, in the sense that there's just a little bit less territory of my desk I need to control, and more I can give over to my toddlers, especially baby Zoe. She's not a baby, she's over 1 year old, but I still call her a baby because she'll always be my baby. But that just gives baby Zoe a little bit more free reign. And on the same subject, another thing I like about Earth Defense Force 5 is that it is, for the better part, a single-player experience, so I can pause the game whenever I want to, and that is very convenient when my children are not being very convenient, which is what comes naturally and rightfully to them, and validates my need to be here as a papa. I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad. I try to stay at home as much time as I can, but I also have been lately really making it a point to go visit friends and get the girls out into the world, and it really helps that we have some fantastic friends with awesome kids. You guys know who you are. In any event, I was gonna tell you more, sorry, the sleepy is starting to happen, so I will finish this video and then I will fall asleep cuddling my wife. It's gonna be great. She went to sleep way before I did, as always. But more about Earth Defense Force 5, and yes, this is a War Thunder video because I'd love to somehow mash the ideas of these two games together in my own special way, and that is something that I've sort of included you all in, if you're willing, to just fantasize about making a better War Thunder. There's a channel in my Discord called War Thunder 2 Design Bureau, and I would like to see your idea for the War Thunder style game or the tank game. I'd like to see it involve combat vehicles of some kind, but other than that, what kind of game would you make? What features would you put in, and why? What do you like about War Thunder, and how would you include it in your game? Those kinds of things. But again, Earth Defense Force 5. Another thing I very much enjoy and appreciate about the game is the way they handle the story. You feel like you're in a Japanese sci-fi giant monster invasion sort of thriller, Uh, there have been a few of those in the 50s and 60s in America, and parallel across the Pacific, the Japanese were also very fond of their kaiju and their monster movies, where they took them a bit more seriously than the way we would see them watching those movies today, of course, because what looks like a guy in a rubber suit to us had a little bit more cultural and political commentary tied to it than it would across the pond. In any event, what I mean to say in regard to Earth Defense Force 5 is that they play the story perfectly. It's markedly corny, it's decidedly comedic, but in a way that doesn't break from immersion. You understand that you're playing a fantasy as the sort of soul survivor, great hero, saving the world guy that you end up playing in the story. And the characters around you, while remaining almost entirely nameless and with no explicit backstory given, act out their part in the heat of the moment in medias res in ways that reveal things about their character that just really bring you into the experience. And so, join me, if you will, in this experience. Welcome to Wing Diver, this anime woman that has no need for pants and a need for speed and plasma weapons to make the enemy bleed. And in case you didn't see that, let's tell you what's going on here. We're shooting heavily armored enemy Greys. That's right, the Greys of Area 51 fame are our opponents in their engorged form here as we take them down with, that's right, you are seeing this correctly, what is essentially a plasma shotgun that fires 100 explosive rounds into the enemy, the atmosphere, any friends who happen to be in a general forward-wise direction of the exploding end of your gun, and the far-flung horizon, because this particular weapon has an exceedingly long range. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but with all of this, let me tell you another thing I love about Earth Defense Force 5, and that is the enemies. The opponents in this game are introduced in a measured and, how do I put this, in a masterful way. You will encounter a smaller version of these Greys that are, again, witness the nature of this game, the humor of it, tongue-in-cheek, reptilians. In fact, you could say they're giant frogs. I did not ask them their sexual preference, so it's hard to tell what the chemicals in the water are doing to them, but they do hate the pollution on planet Earth, and they've come to annihilate mankind and cleanse the planet in general. In any event, again, you fight the lower tier version of a certain enemy and find them to be in some ways challenging and in other ways vulnerable. And then you start to bully them. And then the game introduces Aniki. Big Brother comes onto the block to curb stomp your face as soon as you make a mistake. And then you start to find the weaknesses in that enemy. And Big Brother comes along to make life difficult for you. Again, a moment of appreciation for the ability to pause the game. I'm not sure if I was adjusting my dead legs, as I'm feeling now, or if I was performing an emergency daddy service for one of my kids, which is the far more likely option. But in any event, I do appreciate the ability to pause the game. So, great enemy design, great way of introducing foes and fitting them into the story, while also creating missions around these enemies that give you an opportunity to learn how to deal with them. And along those lines, and yet a segue itself, a huge variety in weapons, in how those weapons function, in support equipment, 4 distinct classes that are, again, very distinct one from another, with various strengths and weaknesses that can be greatly altered, changed, rearranged, and turned on their head by your weapon and support equipment choices, to put things briefly. On top of that, there is a little bit more power throttling in Earth Defense Force 5 than there was in 4, but not to an excessive degree, as we realize that we chose a losing strategy. You don't want to try to face rock that many heavy armor grays, a new enemy unit for that mission that was being introduced. They are the first large-sized enemy to be equipped with a rocket launcher, which allows them to explode entire skyscrapers that would otherwise be acting as cover, protecting you from their, what would you call those, pulse machine gun wielding allies. I chose an aggressive strategy, tried to close with the enemy and eliminate them quickly, which is a winning strategy in a one-on-one scenario, but not so effective 1-on-5. Oh well, you live, you learn, you change your loadout. So we're going to try for a bit more passive, long-range combat, if we can, and yet this particular class does not excel with the long-range equipment that I have access to right now. So I'll also have to be tactical. That comes down to sub-targeting the enemy, something that is very much a feature of War Thunder. We took down his mobility, and then we shoot off his gun arm, and look at how satisfying it is to cause pain to these enemy invaders. Hey, you're not a bully if the guy you're beating the ever-loving bejesus out of is bigger, tougher, stronger, meaner, and more wrong than you. Every now and then, sometimes you need to fight when you're a man, or an anime woman sans pants. In any event, I told you we were going to play a bit more passively, and yet look, we closed to short range pretty rapidly, didn't we? And yet the mobility of Wing Diver, able to pull her Bacon out of the fire. I wonder, Bacon, are you still around for this part of the video? Are you waiting to see what happens when the sleeping pills kick in? They've pretty much kicked in. I'm feeling pretty mellow tone, and if you know what I'm saying. But look at that, we could take cover behind the body of that one enemy monster while we got ready to take down more. And just look at how much feedback there is for the damage you're doing. Now, War Thunder has another way of showing feedback, and I feel like this is pertinent to the conversation of designing the perfect War Thunder style game. And this is personal taste, as I get a face full of electrostatic buckshot, but I very much like a UI where if you're focusing on your enemy, you get all of the information that you need when you're in a combat. So I don't have to watch my energy gauge very closely. It actually has audio cues for me that let me know when it's getting low, and I rely on those audio cues much more than actually looking at the energy gauge. Similar in terms of health and taking damage, there's good feedback to know when I've been hit, so I don't need to check my health constantly. In other words, I don't need to look away from the enemy that I'm focusing on to deal with an individual encounter. You peek at the little radar up in the top right, and then you pick your target, you take your shots, and you can actually see what's happening to the enemy. In War Thunder, you have the hit window that shows what happens after you hit an enemy, and yet I could envision a system where instead of looking away from your enemy to see what kind of damage you dealt to them, maybe some sort of indicator would hover above them briefly. Say you knock out their cannon breach, a little floating symbol of a cannon breach shows up briefly above the tank or somewhere in the targeting reticle, something like that. Or even as simple as having some smoke come out of a certain part of the tank, or say you take down their turret ring, if it would twitch a little bit or something. Maybe, yeah, again, have a little line of smoke coming out of it, sparks coming off of it, something like that, to visually show you that a component is damaged instead of relying on the post-penetration indicator, which again I think is just a fantastic feature in War Thunder. I think it's a staple of the game, and I wouldn't want to see it replaced in War Thunder, but if I wanted to come up with a more immersive system for, say, War Thunder 2 Electric Boogaloo, that's what I would do. In other words, when you're shooting the bits off of these heavily armored greys, seeing armor explode away and then their leg fly out from underneath them and such, that is extremely satisfying to see direct feedback of what your attacks are doing on the subject of your aggression. Not only is it viscerally satisfying, but it's also tactically valuable to be able to focus your eyes on your target and know important information about what's happening to that target. So, another feature that I enjoy about this game that is an exciting, immersive, arcade-style single-player experience with multiplayer capabilities. And that's another thing that I really enjoy about this game. As I've mentioned, playing single player, I can pause the game, I can enjoy it at my own pace, at my own time, at my own convenience or inconvenience. If I fail a mission, it's on me, and I can make progress in my own time, in my spare time, whenever that is available. Able to pause, and all those other advantages of single-player gameplay. And yet, the Earth Defense Force games have a vibrant and lively, mostly Asian player base, and an enjoyable multiplayer experience. So it is possible, although the multiplayer is a much smaller scale than a dedicated multiplayer game. It's definitely something worth getting into, especially once you've unlocked some things that can make that multiplayer experience more fun and meme-worthy, and that's another thing that's worth getting into. In other words, this game, being a PvE, does not need to be balanced, and in fact, it is not balanced across the board, weapons and equipment being much stronger in certain cases, the player capable of growing highly overpowered or putting themselves in an experience where they are severely underpowered, both of which are extremely fun and entertaining experiences in a single-player environment that might not be appreciated so much by the majority of a multiplayer competitive environment, and thus the square peg presenteth itself, because War Thunder is far and away a player versus player multiplayer experience. And I would love to design a PvE experience along the lines of War Thunder, along the lines of Warframe, along the lines of this game that you see before you. And making a PvE focused single player dedicated with multiplayer capability in the style of this game, I think that there's a huge potential for that idea, especially, again, because it need not be balanced whatsoever. So you can have meme vehicles that are useless or overpowered, and you could create scenarios where you need to be overpowered, because those are optional scenarios, and you can jump in at your own discretion. And again, you can choose to underpower yourself and see where that takes you, without inconveniencing crowds of enemies and allies that you would find in a PvP game. Add to that the fact that it's so much easier on your emotions, and you have a very enticing formula that is nothing more than an idea that has yet to be fleshed out, but a compelling one nonetheless. In any event, if you stuck around this long, congratulations, you win nothing. I feel like this experience is just enough for us both to have shared this time together. If you're looking to connect with me, there's a link to the Discord in the description of this video. That is my main social hub. It's the best way to get a hold of me, and I look forward to seeing you connect with me there. In any event, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.